Aloha, my babies. It's your girl T, aka the Nappy Headed Jojoba, and today's video is a bit personal. We're talking about lady business. This is a topic, or actually collection of topics, that I've wanted to get into for a very long time, but I wasn't really sure if anybody would be here for it. People get a little bit squeamish and persnickety when it comes to things that are actually quite natural and part of healthy human function. And if you've been riding with me for a while, you've probably already noticed that I like to keep my personal life personal, but ultimately my channel is about sharing information and sharing ideas, as I say all the time, and I feel like perhaps this might be helpful for some people. So I want to talk about my experience using a menstrual cup. Nearly any woman of age will be familiar with pads and panty liners and tampons. But women's reproductive rights in this country are completely messed up, and education on our reproductive rights and functions are not where they ought to be. And that's why I've got at least one other video in mind for this lady business series, but today I just want to talk about menstrual cups as another option for our menstrual cycles. A bit of background on me: when I was younger and pubescent and first started getting my period, it was pretty bad. The amount of distress that I would go through each month, it's kind of hard to believe compared to how much better it is now. And this went on for years, from being in high school through college, and even a bit after college, while I was still using the traditional methods of, I guess, collecting your menses, which would be tampons and pads and things of that nature. Once I was out of college and started becoming a lot more educated on my health and learning about some of the dangers of tampons, I don't really want to get into it here because people will have their own opinions on things, but you can do your own research, and there are a lot of nasty chemicals and things you probably would not want against or inside of your body if you knew about them. Allegedly, I guess I'll say that, but I'm pretty convinced, namely because of how much my life has changed since getting off of those types of products. So shortly after college, I started exploring other options, and around 5 years ago, I switched to using a menstrual cup. Prior to using an actual menstrual cup, I used a version which is basically a disposable menstrual cup. I forget the exact brand, but I'll leave it linked in the description box. Ultimately, I didn't really enjoy that too much, and I also found it wasn't terribly cost effective. It's quite expensive to use the disposable menstrual cup, so I finally looked into getting a regular menstrual cup, and that is what I use now. As I said, I've been using one about 5 years, and I'm not going to show you mine because that just feels kind of personal, but they look like this. They are a flexible material that allows you to bend them so that you can insert them, and then once it's inserted, you basically have to kind of finesse it so that it's in the right position and to make sure that the opening is open so it can actually collect your menses. I will link the specific cup that I use, and that it's the only one I've used and have experience with, so I can't recommend any others, but I like it, so that'll be in the description box. So after moving on from pads/tampons to the disposable menstrual cups to my menstrual cup that I still use, I was still using the cup off and on in the beginning, just because there is a bit of a learning curve and you do kind of have to get the hang of how to use it. Inserting it can be tricky when you're not used to it, as well as getting it out and emptying it, and also just figuring out your schedule. How long you're supposed to leave it in before you empty it, wash it, and reinsert, that sort of thing. And to this day, I will say changing it can be messy. I tend to time it so that I always am able to change mine when I'm going to be at home. Because I am able to leave my menstrual cup in longer than you would be able to do with a tampon or a pad, it typically hasn't been a problem when I'm in an office environment and I'm able to put it in before work my normal amount of time at work, an 8-hour day or what have you, and then come home and I'm good. So because of the mess and just sort of sometimes needing to rejigger and adjust things as you're inserting or removing it, it is most ideal to use one at home, in my opinion. Not to say you have to be home the entire time you're using it, but I mean when you're actually changing it. I like using my menstrual cup because, one, it's very environmentally friendly. Like I said, I've been using the same one for years now, and I just wash it. I will admit I do have to use a good amount of elbow grease to get it nice and clean the way I like, and it will never look brand new again. But you can get it clean, and they even sell special detergents for them, but I've never found it necessary to use one. And the other equally important reason I like to use it is I don't have to worry about chemicals being leached into my body from toxic cotton or whatever the hell it is they're putting into the most mainstream tampon and pad brands. I've even heard conspiracy theories about there being chemicals being laced into tampons that cause you to bleed more so that you have to buy more tampons. I know that's going to sound crazy to some people, but I will say that I feel that my cycle has gotten so much shorter and so much lighter since getting off of those products. And the distress I was talking about earlier, I mean, typically on day 1 and sometimes even through day 2 of getting my period, I would have crippling cramps that would force me to either stay home sick and not be able to go to my classes. When I was still using your typical drugstore pads and tampons and the like, I would get cramps that were so horrendous. I would have to miss school, miss work. It was bad. And they would last pretty much all of day 1, sometimes even into day 2. So not even just cramps, but just intense fatigue. And while it didn't change immediately after switching from the drugstore brands to my menstrual cup, it was pretty quick. I would say within a year, I would essentially very rarely get cramps at all. And when I would, it would not be the sort of crippling, I have to stay in bed all day type of cramps. My cycle went from being around a week, probably between 5 and 7 days, to now between 2 and 4 days. I shit you not. I still kind of can't believe it, and I've been enjoying this much easier way of managing my menstrual cycle for a few years now. Menstrual cups are kind of cool because they actually have levels, so you can actually kind of see how much menses you're releasing each time you remove it to empty it or whatever. And I don't have a gauge for measuring how much it is now versus before getting on my menstrual cup, but overall I have to assume I'm bleeding a lot less. It has made my life so much better. I don't have to dread getting my period the way I did when I was, in college and stuff, and it's just so much more manageable. Like, I mean, I still track my cycle so that I know when to expect it so I can not be caught unprepared, especially if I'm going to be away from home and traveling or something. But it's not that, oh no, here it comes, I'm going to be sick in bed for an entire day type of situation. If I do get cramps, it probably happens once or twice a year, and they're not bad at all. They don't even last a full day. It might be like, oh, yep, period's coming tomorrow kind of thing, but that's it. And I'm just so grateful to have found a way to improve what used to be a very disruptive part of my life. Even though it was a part of healthy function, that function wasn't happening healthily, if that makes any sense. Anyway, that's really it for this one. I just wanted to share my story and my thoughts on getting off of your traditional tampons and pads, how it worked for me, and if you're struggling with that, maybe it's something worth looking into for yourself. That is going to do it for today's volume of Lady Business, the first ever. I have at least one more video I'd like to do in this arena, and that's more focused on hormonal birth control, like the pill. So if you'd be interested in seeing that and seeing my experiences, let me know. But until then, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.
That's a nappy-headed hose there, I'm going to tell you that now.